Our next speaker is Carl O. from Nashville. He'll speak on hypersonic vitrectomy, continued technical and clinical developments. Carl?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mark, Judy, Mark, and Voss for including me in this program. Relevant to this talk is that I am a consultant to Bausch & Lomb. Hypersonic vitrectomy is a method of vitreous removal in which ultrasonic power is used to actuate the vitrectomy probe. To date, over 200 cases have been performed by 17 surgeons to address a wide variety of vitreoretinal pathology. Here, Victor Gonzalez, where's my video? Let's try it again here. All right, here we go. Victor Gonzalez removing a very thick vitreous hemorrhage in this patient with diabetic retinopathy. Kevin Blinder removing this entire dense nucleus dislocated into the vitreous cavity with the 23-gauge hypersonic probe, never needing a frag. We can remove 1,000 and even 5,000 centistoke silicone oil with this device. So, is it time to replace the guillotine cutter? In my opinion, not yet. Although this device is excellent in most situations and has some expanded capabilities, there's some limitations. Occasionally, I find it doesn't work as well as my guillotine cutter. It doesn't seem to have enough cutting power. And that's demonstrated in this tendency to sometimes create vitreous strands. I'll show this in slow motion. What we seem to be seeing here is exposure of the native collagen structure of the vitreous. And what's interesting is this doesn't cause any peripheral traction. We haven't seen iatrogenic breaks, but it's disconcerting to see that. We'd like to see those fibers cut more effectively. And sometimes we see this chewing phenomenon in trying to cut a thick fibrovascular membrane. An improved understanding of the fluidics of hypersonic vitrectomy will lead to improved device performance. You've seen this video that shows, let me see if it will advance. Well, on the left, the cutter moves up and down, and the vitreous interrupts its entry into the probe, whereas on the right, we see a continuous flow of vitreous into the always open port of the hypersonic probe. Now, these I really would like to show. What we'll see in this video, which is a really cool, super slow motion video of just a 25 millisecond actuation of this device. Can you get the video to play? I'll just keep talking while they try to get it to play. What we'll see is that vitreous not only is interrupted in its movement into the port as the guillotine action occurs, but that vitreous is pushed away from the port. Here we go. So we'll see vitreous entering, and not only does it stop, but you see that pushing away. And this happens so quickly, we really don't see it when we're operating. With the hypersonic probe, you'll see this sort of dancing of the vitreous at the probe port, and then the movement into the port as vacuum builds up. So what's happening? We see this a bit better in fluid. Let's get this video to play if we can. So this, we're looking at an end-on view of a hypersonic vitrectomy probe. And what we'll see during this super slow motion video is particles of triamcinolone moving into the port, but also a little jet of particles moving away from the port. And this is something we really don't see in vitreous. We really only see it in fluid because the mass effect of vitreous dampens this inertial effect of the cutter tip. Can you play that? There we go. And move the cursor out of the way, please. Thank you. All right, so we see the particles moving in and the little jet stream moving away. All right. I think I've lost control of the talk. So next slide, please. Okay, so what's happening here? No videos here. So this is what occurs with this cutter tip when there's no vacuum. As the tip moves downward, the inertia of the fluid or tissue within the lumen is left behind, and that opposite movement generates vacuum. Similarly, when the probe retracts, the fluid is forced in the opposite direction, and it pushes a little of the material within the lumen out. And the net effect of this is always inflow. So there's more inflow than outflow, but with turbulence. And this turbulence is overcome as soon as we activate vacuum. This is just the natural effect of the device activating on its own. So in this vitrectomy with the hypersonic device, you see the retina is really pretty quiet, but you can actually see vitreous dancing around over to the side. I think that may be this little jet effect that's really present with all our devices, but it would be great if we could find a way to control this better. This turbulence is actually much greater with a guillotine cutter than with a hypersonic probe, but as I mentioned, it's masked by viscosity and density of vitreous. But if you think about it, we see things dancing around in the eye all the time as we operate. With the hypersonic device, smaller gauge probes and changes in pore geometry can decrease turbulence. We're also looking at modifications to handpiece frequency. All of the cases to date have been done with a 31 kilohertz probe. We're going to begin operating with a probe that can go up to 41 kilohertz, effectively 2.5 million cuts per minute. And with this higher frequency, we get much higher flow, although the flow has always been excellent with this device. More importantly is that shear stress or cutting power increases in a quadratic relationship to frequency. So increased frequency will give us increased cutting power. We hope to eliminate the stranding and be able to cut thick membranes more effectively. Increased frequency will give us increased flow, but it will also give us increased turbulence. So it's complicated. Adaptive frequency control will adjust frequency instantaneously in response to tissue behavior. This will allow us to optimize power and minimize turbulence. So will optimizations in pore geometry and smaller gauge probes. With the tremendous advancements in our guillotine cutters, some might ask, why bother? So as an example, I'll show this picture of the Porsche 911, which many consider a perfect combination of power, simplicity, and elegance. With cars like this, who would make a car like this? The EV1 electric car with a range of 70 miles an hour. Who would do that? Porsche. So here's the Taycan coming out next year. I would guess that 10 years ago, hardly anyone in this audience would have thought about buying an electric car, but my guess is that anyone who buys a car within the next 10 years will at least consider buying an electric car. Perfection alone is not a reason to not seek further improvement. I think that hypersonic vitrectomy has the potential to provide performance superior to current state-of-the-art guillotine vitreous cutters. I look forward to giving you more updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.